This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek Radio. We're with Brian Crowell, and he's a teacher at Berkeley High. Welcome, Brian. Why don't you talk about how you became a teacher and what happened in that development?
Growing up in school, I always liked school. I liked sports. I liked after-school programs. I liked school dances, school events. I was on leadership. My mother was a high school counselor, so I always liked the school experience. I thought it was a place to keep people safe, kids safe, and thought it was a vital part of every community. So because I always liked school, I thought that I could become a teacher and give students that same experience. So I literally never left school. I went straight from my undergrad. While I was working my undergrad, I worked in the college library, worked as a daycare teacher. And right after I graduated, I started subbing for a year. And then I got my first contract in 2000. So I think I was always a student and never wanted to leave school. So I can honestly say I literally have never left school. I'm 30.
So you love education.
Yeah, I love education. I'm 37 now and I never left school.
And how did you get into the Berkeley School District and Berkeley High?
I came over in 2007. Came up from Richmond. Wanted to teach high school. I taught high school some years before. I wanted to get back into it, and Berkeley High had a great reputation for academic freedom, creativity, really highly educated staff, teachers with advanced degrees, and Berkeley was kind of on the cutting edge of a lot of stuff, at least historically. And so that's why I wanted to come to Berkeley. Is I thought it was always going to be the place to be on the cutting edge of a national issue, whatever that was.
So you thought it was pretty exciting to teach at Berkeley High?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what happened when you arrived and started teaching here at Berkeley High?
I came in 07-08 school year, had a wonderful mentor teacher named Doug Powers, who ended up teaching there for 40 years. He did all of my, your new teacher bits of work with AP macroeconomics, also government, also taught human geography, 9th grade world history. So just learned how to become a researcher and a master of your content. That's what I got from Doug Powers. Learned how to think outside the box, do your homework, and really bring the experience home to the students. And I also learned how to really give an extra piece of yourself in the classroom. That's what I learned from Doug Powers.
And you began teaching as a regular teacher there?
Yes, sir, 2007.
And also you became active in the union. Why did you decide to become active in the union?
Always wanted to be a union rep and an advocate for teachers. My dad did some advocacy for some firefighters in Los Angeles while he was going through law school, and when he was at Arizona State playing football, University of Arizona, playing football, he signed a petition to get this player back on the field. So my dad, I think I got the activism from my dad, and to stick up for people and be an advocate for people. So I became the shop steward of academic choice. That's the large program. At that time, it was 65 teachers and like 10 counselors at that time. So I became the shop steward building rep for Berkeley High in 2009.
And what did you find what was going on?
Well, what I have to say, what I found was what I thought was how inept the union was, just as far as just bottom line advocacy. For example, I served on the grievance committee. I asked the union president, what's our winning percentage on grievances? She says, well, we win 89–90% of our grievances. Well, I said, well, if we're winning 89–90% of our grievances, why aren't we grieving more? I'm like, if we're, and clearly it shows what the district thinks of our contract. They clearly, this is just slam dunk easy stuff. This never even went to arbitration. They clearly don't really respect our contract and us as educators. If we're winning 90% of the time, their grievances is a question of power and not being correct. So that was one thing I noticed. And also teachers being referred to BPAR. That was the first incident serving on the grievance committee. We had a teacher who, a veteran math teacher who was referred, got a poor performance review. That's what gets you referred to remediation. Then a day later, the main principal came in and gave him a distinguished performance evaluation. Perfect in all 6 categories. I said, well, wait a minute, how can the vice principal say he's totally incompetent and the principal say he's the best teacher that ever walked the earth in one day? I said, what's going on here? So I took it back to the the union president for a grievance hearing. You know, we want to have a meeting about it. The union president serving on the BPAR panel, had a conflict of interest because she's serving on the BPAR panel and she's supposed to be on the grievance committee to possibly get you out. So she's playing two hats. And I said, no, if you don't, so we're going to do this grievance right now. This teacher's obviously competent, and this is a sham. So we're able to get this teacher out, which is good.
And what is the BPAR program?
It's Berkeley Peer Assistance and Review, which is called Peer Assistance and Review in the California Ed Code, be in the 44500 section, if California Ed Code, if people want to look it up. And basically, it's a maximum 2-year remediation program for teachers who are underperforming. That's what it is. And if you don't, you get a coach, and you go before a panel twice a year with maybe 4 teachers and 3 administrators, and then they decide whether to recommend you to the school board for termination. That's what it is. But everybody understands it's a forced retirement mechanism. There are teachers who have retired. Lots of teachers will retire rather than go through remediation.
And why was the president of the union on this board?
I believe, and I'm obviously filing legal grievances on this, that it's fundamental conflict of interest. In my view, the union president, who serves as chair of the grievance committee and also will decide your access to union counsel, also serves and gets paid. So she has a financial incentive to keep the program going. I think she gets something like $2,500 or $3,000 a year. She's been chair for 10 years, so she's made, some good 25, 30 grand is good extra money for serving on this panel. So she has absolute conflict of interest, not only for her position as president, but I think it's fundamentally against unionism.
So you began to investigate what this organization was doing. Yes. Not just in Berkeley, but around the state. And what did you discover?
I discovered after my disclosures that from Berkeley, I got demographic data from Oakland, San Francisco, and San Diego, and I found that a disproportionate number of elderly teachers over 55 years of age with extended, highly educated master's degrees, African American, Latino teachers, or even Chinese in San Francisco were being referred. So we're talking a specific policy that didn't look mathematically random is what the statistics teachers came up with. I didn't know that statistical discrimination existed until I went through this process. They do nice standard deviations and all these cool things to decide, well, is this a random or is this deliberate? And they said this is deliberate. They're targeting these teachers for a specific reason.
And are teachers fighting back around the state who are involved in this program?
I'm kind of at the pioneer, the infant stage. It's just getting discussed a lot in New York. I'm just now getting calls from San Francisco. I'm starting to get calls from people in Oakland and San Francisco, and hey, what's going on with this, and why is the union supporting this? And so I filed a duty of fair rep with the Public Employees Relations Board against my union on this issue. I think it's a fundamental, not only the discrimination, but you pay dues to be represented. And management has this arbitrary power over your evaluation. That's your job security. And I saw as witness to this kangaroo court that your job is not based on your performance. It's based on the politics of what's going on in the room at the time or whatever policy they had. I saw in my case, another teacher at Berkeley High, literally the principal called and said, I'm going to call your union president and ask if I can change her evaluation. It's like, well, yeah, literally, yes, I have the transcript. Literally, I have the transcript. Why is the principal, why does he think he can even call the union president to change an evaluation? She's not a personnel director. She's not in charge of evaluations. And on top of that, why didn't she advocate for the teacher to change the evaluation? Same thing, and the same thing happened in my case. She said, well, I'll call Vernon and ask him to change your evaluation. I said, well, sir, what you're saying is the evaluation is subjective and not about pedagogy or teaching. So this is something else. And I saw another transcript with the principal. He says, well, management's telling us to use it more. So in other words, it's a mandate to use this program more, clearly to go after senior teachers, cut labor cost, intimidate the staff. So these are the things that management has said that I have on the transcript. It's not things that I've said.
Well, why would the union go along with a management-driven program which is targeting professional teachers and targeting senior teachers who are good teachers.
Well, speaking, I even argued with Anthony Cody on this on the phone. Anthony Cody was a popular writer for Ed Week. And he said to me on the phone, he said, well, teachers are afraid to take on the bad teacher narrative. That's what he told me. And that's the issue. How do we take on this bad teacher narrative? We use PAR to take on the narrative, even though that's not the issue. And we want to maintain a kind of collective management model because we don't want to file more grievances. We don't want to go to arbitration. We don't want to go to PERB. We don't want to duke it out in court. So it's to me, it's a Band-Aid. And also, I have to say, it does get your staff in line. I have to say,
You mean this intimidation
yes,
and threats? And
yes, if they know that the teachers all know, if they talk too much in a staff meeting, if they speak out against policies they don't like, if they align themselves with a group of teachers that management and the union sees as unfriendly, they know that they have the PAR hanging over your head, and it only takes a few checks of the box and you're failed. You see my point? So that I've seen in just a short period of time a more rigorous veteran actual question of teacher professionalism and academic freedom. Those teachers have been moved out into a really docile, timid, intimidated staff in a very short period of time.
And so what has that brought in the schoolroom as far as if teachers are being intimidated and they're afraid to speak up? Has it changed the whole educational process?
Oh yeah, it's been demoralizing. I mean, one of the union reps, this was not this past school year, but the year before, he did a survey on the health of teachers. 20% of the teachers said they had some sort of mental, emotional, or physical ailment. 20% of the staff is literally sick. 200 teachers, that's 50 teachers. So in any given day, 20% of the students aren't getting the best out of their teacher because they're not well because of the conditions and the hostile conditions they're placed under. So absolutely, the morale and the demoralization of the staff, I mean, is amazing to watch.
Well, the issue of workplace bullying
Sure.
and scapegoating of teachers, it seems like there's a whole national campaign, the problems of teachers, bad teachers, the Vergara decision. And do you think this is organized? There's an organized campaign to attack teachers and attack their conditions?
Well, sure.
Absolutely.
If you look at the middle class historically, your road to get to the middle class has always been public education, because it's always been something that's public K through 12 and junior college. It's always something to give you a self-sustaining skill to go out and compete and join the middle class. That has always been public education, particularly for minorities, Latinos, Chinese, whatever, people from all walks of social and economic life. Public education was the vehicle for the middle class. Now that direct vehicle is under attack in many ways. You know, you have Eli Broad, you have Bill Gates, you have Kip, you have all these, you have retired NBA players, retired NFL players, you have rap stars who are funding charter schools. So absolutely, it's absolutely a vehicle to destroy the middle class, and that is the vehicle they're using. So the bad teacher narrative is my student or daughter has a bad teacher, so therefore it undermines the school itself. So because they have all the bad teachers in the public school, then we'll send them to the charter school. So absolutely, absolutely.
And a lot of these charter schools are in Black, Latino communities, poor communities. They don't seem to end up in white communities or wealthier districts. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, because, well, number one, if you look at statistics, these charter schools don't last. They don't stay open very long, number one. Number two, there's always some sort of scandal, bullying scandal, financial scandal that goes on. They pull the ADA from the public school. And frankly, I do believe, even though we have Brown versus Board of Education, there's still a very powerful, significant faction in the political elite that really don't want integrated public education. So that's why it's to peel off to make it more segregated. Berkeley High is an extremely segregated school. Now there's a charter school opened in the district office. It's all Black and Latino. You have BTech, which is the continuation school, which is all Black and Latino. So basically, public education, multiculturalism, is going away. We actually, in my view, we have lost the last 50 years of gains. Frankly, we're kind of back where we started. That's how I see it.
Well, if that's the case, why would the unions, the AFT and the NEA, accept charter schools and also say that Common Core, which kind of commodifies education and makes it a mechanical process, takes away really teacher development? Why would they go along with these policies?
Well, it's just the bottom line corruption in the money that they have tied into groups. Like, I believe there's one, I can't remember the name, but there was a union entity tied to Michael Milken, who was caught up in an SNL scandal, who's supposed to be away from the stock market forever, but he found a way to get back. Obviously, if you're a union representative, you get paid by dues. The dues will keep you, if you're a teacher, out of the classroom. It's a cush position. You get expense account. You go to these conferences. You hobnob. You get to travel. It's a cush life. And so you're not giving up all your wonderful chi to the students 7, 8 hours a day. And they have a vested interest in keeping those positions, similar to the Congress has a vested interest in keeping their positions. And that's why. If you ask Wendy Weingarten, okay, do you want to quit for 3 years and go back into the classroom? What do you think she would say? She wants to go back in the classroom and teach some 7th graders? I mean, let's be honest. So that's really, it's the people who are now the furthest away from the classroom are now the policymakers. I think that's a problem in and of itself.
Now, at the AFT convention, apparently there was bullying.
Yes.
During the convention, and what happened? Why would they bully the teachers? They're
being
bullied at the schools, and then they're bullied at the convention. I mean, it sounds...
Well, I heard, one teacher, the anti-Common Core people would get punched in the face, and there was a big thing. The New York Post had an article about that. The entrenched power who have profited off the existing system that is harming the majority are going to carry that philosophy, that ideology, until they're forced not to. And that's how entrenched corrupt powers always work. Until the people in mass decide and get the consent of other leadership, new leadership, that this is no longer proper. That's why. The union itself, the concept of labor, is going through what I call going to go through a painful growing pains the next 5 years. It's going to be a painful process of what it means to pay your money for labor representation, and also teachers, labor in general, sitting on their butt thinking that the union will take care of you. If you don't show up to the meetings, you don't show up to the caucuses, you don't give your voice and put pressure on your representatives to represent you in the way you think you should, then you get apathy. So I think what's happened is I do think there's been a kind of complacency that's built in. They're not bothering me, let me focus on me. And for a long time it was, well, as long as they don't bother me in my classroom, I'm fine. Now that's changed. Now they're in your classroom telling you how to teach. And that's what's terrifying teachers now. I think that's why the opposition has increased, because now those who are sitting on the fence and saying, well, as long as my academic freedom is untouched, then there's no problem. Now that they see their actual profession under threat, now they're getting off the fence.
What do you think about in California, for example? You have all these billionaires in Silicon Valley, and the Gates Foundation. I mean, these Vergara, which is funded by this guy Welch, who's a multimillionaire, saying that they're going to take care of education. They're going to make education better. And at the same time, California is 47th in spending for public education. I mean, you think it seems?
Yeah, I think that now when you talk about the public interest, this is how I think the billionaires think. I don't know, because I haven't been in a room with them. I know a couple of wealthy people, in the $100 million range, but I don't know billionaires. They believe that their money defines the public interest. So what Bill Gates has done with the Governors Association, bribing NEA, bribing AFT, what he has done in effect is bought the public interest through Common Core. The reason for that I don't know, but I do think that the moneyed access now defines whatever the public interest is. And I think that's the issue. Rather than the electoral process where your voice, your vote to the elected officials, they are the public interest. The public interest has been bought. And to compete with that, I think that labor is going to have to, at times, strike, at times withhold their labor, at times march, and frankly, as history tells us, get in the courtroom as well. So it's going to be, we're going to have to refight the fight of the gains of the 40s. That's how I see it.
And do you think public money should be going to charter schools?
No, I mean, that again, you're talking about, I mean, you're talking about a transfer of public policy. You're undermining the public. The whole purpose of public is that everyone is involved, is that everyone has a say, and that there's accountability. That's why it's called public money, because you and I are supposed to be accountable through representation and legal process. Once the public money goes to private, you've taken away the public interest, and now the private will dictate to the public. So it's kind of like a reverse, oligarchy that Senator Bernie Sanders was talking about. I don't think that we are in a representative democracy. That's really the underlying issue. It's the end, in my view, of the kind of this crony capitalist model. That's how I see it. Because if you look at the subprime mortgage crisis, what happened is basically capital ran out of places to put its bad money, and then that bubble popped. And they're constantly looking for another bubble, if you will. So to me, the charter schools is the new bubble. That's how I see it. And that bubble will pop, and then they will look for a new bubble.
But in the meantime, a lot of public schools will have been destroyed.
They have been closed, destroyed, leased out to private agencies. As I understand, they get sweetheart deals for facilities, charter schools. They get these deals. They don't have to bid on the open market like other people do. So you have this crony capitalism versus market. It's all crony capitalism. So I definitely see that when people realize that the public trust has been undermined with charter schools, and it's just, we're getting a whiff of that now, then I think you'll see the charter school fad die down. Because frankly, all these scandals coming out of charter schools are going to hit the media more and more.
And there's a Commission on Teacher Credentials, which is supposed to do oversight
Sure.
of teachers, good teachers, bad teachers, and continuing education. What's been your experience with the Commission on Teacher Credentials?
Well, I recently did a public records request from the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing about, there's a policy. The CTA lawyer told me this not too long ago. She said districts have a mandate to, if there is a discipline issue or any issue, they have a mandate to report you to the commission to have your license revoked. In other words, this is the policy now. I'm like, oh, really? So so I look in Los Angeles, 2008 to 2012, I look up this demographic of teachers. So I look in this time period, 5-year time period, 8 to 12, and 350 black teachers disappeared from Los Angeles in 5 years. And I'm like, well, where'd they go? Not everybody retired, and 350 African-American teachers, that's a lot of teachers. So if they didn't, all of them didn't retire, and maybe some of them got washed out in the probationary process, that means a large number of them had to have been disciplined or forced out, or you see what I'm getting at. So I then did a public record request for discipline. Well, who's been referred for discipline? I want age, race, and gender. Same thing as I did with BPAR, and then I get a call back. Well, we don't have that data. What do you mean you don't have that data? You have all kinds. You have demographic data on new teachers coming in. So what do you mean you don't have data on teachers who were possibly going out? So we got in this kind of a back and forth over the phone. She says, well, let me see if we can go by age, because we do have birthdays. There's birthdays when you apply for your commission. I said, well, fine. Well, let's just start off with that, and then we'll go from there. And I told if I have to go to court to get it, I will. I have to go to Superior Court for non-disclosure. So I think I would guess teachers referred for discipline to the commission, I would guess would be disproportionate African-American, Latino, and over 55 years old. I'm guessing, I don't, because it makes sense with the microeconomic trend. That's my guess. So again, you have a deliberate policy, and the Wall Street kind of ideology, cost cutting, and it is now right at home in the school boards, in superintendents' offices. That's just what they think. That's what they think is correct. Are the test scores high? Are they going up? If the test scores are going, we must be doing something right. Then I can get reelected. Then I can move up to state assembly. See, it's part of the machine, and frankly, the Democratic Party has adopted that machine.
And the support for charter schools in the Democratic Party.
Oh, Obama, Al Franken, and I used to rather like Al Franken. Absolutely, MSNBC, that channel, which is supposed to be I guess the opposite of Fox. I don't really watch mainstream TV. Again, you get the tax credit. Tax credit is a direct credit on your taxes. It's not a deduction. In 10 years, you're going to double your money. So, I mean, it's a financial incentive if you're a retired senator to open a charter school. I mean, why don't you get a tax credit to open a new public school? How about that? And get a tax credit to have music programs and physical education and art and enrichment. You see my point. So again, what's public is being redefined, and I think we're going back, unfortunately, pre-public school, where the educated if you were wealthy and had a tutor. I think the idea of having a multitude of people in your society educated and confident, I think that's the root.
Well, wasn't that the idea of race to the top? Only a certain number of people can get a good public school? So
Sure.
let's have a charter. Wasn't that the ideology?
Oh,
behind that?
absolutely. I think as I see race to the top, I mean, Common Core, I don't know if people know, Common Core was put into the stimulus program. It was hidden in the $700 billion stimulus to help bail out Wall Street. And then Common Core was snuck in there. I don't think people understand that. The race to the top, to me, is a violation of Title IX. You're forcing schools to compete for federal monies that they're supposed to get anyway under the law. I think it's another undermining of existing law that was already passed. I think that Common Core is a direct violation of the ESEA. That's LBJ's educational ESEA 1965. I don't think that the federal government can say that Montana and California should have the same standards. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying, is that all these different states with different demographics and different economies and different cultures are going to have the same standards. And, I mean, that doesn't make, and we all know how diverse the United States is. So the concept to me doesn't work. And I also think that teachers in the classroom, that's where the battle's going to be fought, frankly.
Now, in California, the Governor Brown has, and the Democratic legislature have passed legislation that increases the amount of money that teachers have to pay for their pensions.
Yeah, 0.15, correct. It went up, yes. That's correct.
And now school districts are saying we can't give any wage increases because we have to take more money out of your paycheck to pay for this pension. You have negotiations. You don't have contracts in Los Angeles, and Oakland and San Francisco. They're going to be taking a strike vote. Why is this all separate? It seems like each district is trying to fight a systemic problem separately.
Because I think that, well, to be honest with you, I think the STRS model is flawed. If you look at the STRS model in retirement, it's based on actuary tables. It's basically say, you know, after this amount of lifespan, you're going to die. And it's true. A teacher who retires before 59 lives a lot longer than a teacher who teaches past 63. That's just mathematical. So you're not going to be alive to collect the money anyway. So to get back more in benefits than you paid in, you have to live to you're 87 years old. Anyway, it's already geared towards management. It's already bad. You follow. Then you're going to make it worse by making you have to put in more of your own pocket to subsidize, to sustain a system that's already taking more benefits than it's putting out. You follow. So it's already, I think that the PERS system is better, frankly, always has been. I always thought that the teacher's not getting the firefighter model, which is basically 3% every year of that you're working, 30 years is 90% of your retirement. The police officer, I always thought that was the model we should be using. We do not get Social Security. A lot of teachers would like to pay into Social Security as a teacher, but you can't because we're exempt. So instead of the unions in LA, San Francisco, and Oakland taking on the systemic problem with the pension system, period. And did you buy subprime mortgages with our money? We don't, how much junk did you buy? Did you buy these bad bonds? Did you take losses? You follow. And if you took losses, did you go after the banks that sold you the bad junk? You follow. In other words, you're right. Instead of getting at the issue, we're fighting separately because I think some unions want to work with the Democrats and some unions are ready to go their own way. That's the issue.
And do you think that there's a change? I mean, you say that there's a growth now of different opposition groups.
Sure.
Teachers are beginning to wake up, and it seems like it's spreading throughout the country.
Sure.
That they're putting the dots together.
Sure.
That this is a rigged kind of situation against teachers.
Absolutely. I think I have to say, to me, it's not fair that a 12th grader in California gets one semester of economics. And frankly, to me, that's probably the most important class you'll have, is the macro and the microeconomics. Because all these are macroeconomically or microeconomically driven policies for the 1%. Yet teachers, when it comes to economics, when it comes to union contracts, because they don't know the terms, the legalese, and what's actually the policy and why the district is bargaining a certain way, they're at a fundamental disadvantage. So I think the good thing is they're making the connections to all the financial interests. I think that's the best thing. And that's bipartisan. I mean, it's one thing, even the conservatives, banking and Wall Street, even the conservatives can get behind that, and bailouts, and to see how it's related. I think what needs to happen in the next 3 to 5 years is the economic awareness of teachers. Absolutely.
And this affects not just teachers, but working class people.
Oh, sure.
Who want their kids to have a decent education in the future. You know,
yeah, I mean, I mean, we have Jarvis Gann, Prop 13. Obviously, that's an issue on top of it. But yeah, I think, frankly, I do see the funding, the fundamental funding that you would find in a school, like the nurse, the eye doctor, the dentist, the psychologist, the counselor, yoga. Frankly, you'll get all those services in a prison school. And all that's been cut from a K-12 public school. So you can see the priorities have changed. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, all the stuff we're talking about that I grew up with are gone and have now transferred to after you're incarcerated youth. And that to me is sad. Drafting.
I mean, a system that says you get these things in prison, you have to go to prison to get these things?
In the juvenile system, you will get all those things that I just mentioned.
And you were talking about teaching. There's more freedom in teaching in the juvenile center than
yes. If I wanted, yeah, absolutely. If I want to talk about, for example, the Syrian conflict from many different perspectives and foreshadowing what's driving the Syrian conflict, that would be an interesting discussion in a juvenile setting, absolutely. In Berkeley, that was considered a bad lesson. So absolutely, the two bastions of academic freedom left are collegiate. They're not going after college tenure. You notice Vergara never mentioned college professors, adjunct professors, never mentioned it. Why is that? You follow? Whereas, and Vergara misunderstated the case, teachers, we don't have tenure. What we have is due process. College professors have tenure. They actually, unless they do something absolutely egregious, they're not going to be fired. They're a permanent part of the university. Teachers are never a permanent part of the school district. They're just teachers with due process, you follow. So, and also I have to say the unions, both CTA and CFT were totally flat-footed on the issue. The judge basically attacked the 14th Amendment, equal protection. He said teachers have too much due process. They should only have Skelly, which is the classified employees. So he attacked due process of law. That's what he attacked, and people are missing that. Like, oh well, this is about bad teachers. No, the legislature gave teachers due process to prevent bullies, bully administrators, bully school boards, bully superintendents from attacking teachers, which is what they have the power to do through your performance review. So the CTA and CFT are sitting there flat-footed, not understanding what was the underlying cause of it was to basically impose the 1%, your rights under the Constitution, to impose that, basically their ideology. These teachers have too much due process.
But I mean, the CTA, the CFT have lawyers, they're paying them millions of dollars.
Sure.
To defend teachers. How could they miss something as basic as due process and the 14th Amendment?
Well, I think, I'll be honest with you, some of my teachers I know think it's deliberate. Some think they're caught flat-footed. I think it's a little bit of both. I think you're going to get, I've talked to some teachers in New York. There's talk of there's a Vergara twin case in New York. The teachers are planning a counter-Vergara case to counter that, which is good. I think you're going to get a lot more action out of New York. I think they live in the clouds less out here in California. I don't know. But I do, I'll be honest with you, I do, just lots of emails back with CTA lawyers. We're going to have to force the issue of this kind of partisan loyalty. These policies, particularly the attack on public education, is more aggressive under Obama and the Democrats than it was under Bush and the Republicans. That's just a fact.
And are you optimistic? You have a caucus, and there it seems like there's growing.
Oh, absolutely. I told whether I'm around in Berkeley, I'm still going to obviously do labor advocacy, but I do see the caucus growing organically. The caucus is going to get larger because of the need. There's a need for representation. So colleagues aren't sticking up for their colleague. Colleagues aren't representing each other. They're not supporting each other. We have factions where, Berkeley High is split into factions now. It's very sad. It's the kind of the management pro-union faction, and also this kind of the fence sitters and those who are just trying to hold on until they retire. So
people are afraid.
I've never seen so much fear in a school which is supposed to be a safe place. You follow? So and I haven't even gotten to special education yet. I mean, Berkeley, I haven't even. I mean, that's a project I'm working on. But just the disproportionality of black students in special education, disproportionality of the discipline of students in special education, which is a whole other issue. So I do think there's some mistreatment going on with that as well.
Okay, and what website can people go to if they want more information?
BerkeleySchoolsLaborCaucus.org, BerkeleySchoolsLaborCaucus.org, and just type that in, it should come up, and I'm sure you'll be seeing lots of